down to this little video about the AD480 reverb unit. As you can hear from that bark, it sounds like I'm in a very large room, but actually I'm not. I'm in an ordinary living room. And if I do that, you will be able to hear it's back to sounding like a living room. As you can hear, the AD480 makes an enormous difference to everything that we're able to do when we're practicing on our own. All you need to do is install the software and plug the device into a pair of loudspeakers. Now those could be a cheap pair of PC speakers like you'd have to plug into your laptop or your desktop computer, but equally you could plug it through your TV set or through a hi-fi system. All you need to do is get a little 3.5 pin 3.5mm jack and plug it in. Right, so let's now have a proper look at the AD480. At the top of the screen there are two faders. The first one is labelled volume, and it controls the amount of sound that the unit is going to produce. As I turn it up, you will hear that it all gets echoey, and as I turn it back down again, you will see that it goes to silence. Below that there's a second fader which is even more important. This one decides the mix of sound between wet and dry. Wet is the echoey sound, dry is the amplification of the musical instrument. When we're working with loudspeakers, very important, we would set it to 100%, so only wet sound. We're only going to add in the reverb, no amplification of your recorder. If you do, it will howl, because the noise from your recorder will come back out of the loudspeakers, back into the unit, and of course it goes round and round and round until it honks. Up at the top of the screen, you will be able to see the settings that we're using, and it tells us at the moment we're playing via speakers. That's one of the presets that we've designed for you. If I press the presets button, I can change it to play via headphones, or I can change it back. And you can see that when I do that, there are minute changes in the faders, and one very big change, which is that when we're on headphones, we turn the mix right down. So now we're doing mostly amplification and just a little bit of reverb, because of course once you put headphones over your head, you will find that you can't hear your recorder terribly well, so we need to be able to amplify it into your headphones so that you can still hear what you're playing. Don't try this one with loudspeakers. It will howl and honk, because the minute you feed the recorder's sound back out of the loudspeakers, you will get an enormous great howl. The faders at the bottom are the things which actually control how the unit is going to sound. If we look at the first item, we can see it's the size of the room, followed by the reverb length for the room, so how hard the surfaces are in there. We can also put a little bit of pre-delay in as well if we want. That's basically the time it takes for the first echo or first bit of reverb to come back. If we move to page 2, we will see that there are a whole load more faders which get into even more detail. You probably don't need to adjust these, with one exception, and that's the very last fader on page 2. It's labelled low cut, and normally it will be set fairly low, but if you set it fairly low you will probably get problems with the whole system howling. So we've turned it up to somewhere between 950 and 1000. That's 1000 hertz. So basically anything below that, any of those lower frequency sounds, basically the notes that the recorder is playing, will get filtered out. Finally, if we go to the last of the setup pages, this time it's called Setup, and we go to that, we've got a button where we can change, it says stage mode on it. What it actually does is it makes the screen go a bit dark. It's like a nighttime mode. More importantly, down at the bottom, there is a button which is labelled background audio. And background audio, if that is not selected, the minute you try and come out of the AD480 to go to your browser so that you can play your consort's piece, the AD480 will turn itself off, which is really not very helpful. Just above that there are 3 buttons: mixed, wet, dry. When you select the mix button, it will tell you where the outputs of the unit are routed, and for mixed it should have 1 and 2 highlighted next to it. For the wet output it should be deselected and the dry output deselected. We want to use both, so if you're using headphones we can have a bit of reverb and a bit of wet sound, and if we're using loudspeakers we will turn the mix control down so that we only get wet. If you're only going to use loudspeakers, you could turn the mix output off and turn the wet output on, in which case that fader that does the mix will do nothing from then on. Up at the top of the screen we've got 3 or 4 items, bank, preset, routing and MIDI configuration. The bank and the preset basically is which memory bank do you want to use and which preset are you then going to use thereafter. If you have bought the software fresh, you will find there is only one bank when you open it up, just the default bank with all those presets that come free with the unit. So in practice what we've done is we've then hit the save button, created a new name and created a second bank, and in there we've put just the 2 presets that we think you will need. Below that, the presets then allows you to set a default set of settings that the unit is going to use. You probably won't need to worry about that, but if you do make any changes to our settings because you find it works better, this is where you would then be able to save that so that it's there for the future. Well, there you go, that's how you set up the 480 to work. Well, we're sitting back in the performing area now, so let's have some consort music from our very own consort site. And let's turn the reverb unit back on. There we go, it's working again. And if I switch over to the browser, you will see that we've got a very nice piece of Buxtehude loaded. And I've got a treble recorder here, so let's play some Buxtehude.